Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would share my summer new releases TBR with you. I have so many new books that I've added to my TBR. Will I read them ever? Probably not. But we can hope and we can dream and we can make our little TBR list, and I'm hoping that I can at least read some of these and get to them. And I just wanted to share them with you. Maybe you'll be interested in them. I've tried to stick with books that are probably not super popular or well known. I mean, there's a couple sprinkled in here, but I've tried to pick books that I haven't really seen people talk about, and you'll hear some new books that weren't on your radar. So let's get started. And with these books, I'm kind of just reading a little bit of the summary excerpt that interested me most. So if you want a full picture of the book, I would go ahead and check out their Goodreads page. You can get their full synopsis there. The first book that I'm really excited to talk about is Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. And if you see me looking down, I'm just kind of looking at the summary of the book. And this one, from what it sounds like, it is about love and time travel and alternate universes. So I love that sort of thing. I love it in movies. I love it in books. So this sounds like it'll be really up my alley. It says, over the course of 20 years, by coincidence and design, Thomas and Grace will find their lives brought back into orbit as the mystery of the vanished astronomer unfolds into a devastating tale of love and scientific pursuit. Thomas and Grace will ask themselves what it means to love and be loved, what is fixed and what is mutable, how much of our fate is predestined and written in the stars, and whether they can find their way back to each other. So I love those kinds of books. Like I said, there's just something about love and time travel and going through time to basically find that one for you. So it's really romantic. I love that idea. So that is Enlightenment. The next book I want to talk about is called The Future Was Color. The Future Was Color by Patrick Nathan. And this one had a really unique premise that I haven't really read anything like. It says it's about a gay man navigating life in the 1940s and 50s, spanning from sun-drenched Los Angeles to hidden corners of working-class New York to the virtuosic climax in the Las Vegas desert. The Future Was Color is an immaculately written exploration of making art and reinventing the self, post-war American decadence, and the psychosis that lingers in a world that's seen the bomb. So this seems like it's after the war, and it follows a gay man and him navigating queer life in all these big cities and in that big culture change after the war. So it sounds really interesting. I do like a historical fiction. Definitely want to check that one out. The next book I saw was Wild Ground by Emily Usher. So this one, if you know anything about me, you know that I love first love stories. So I love any story about finding your first love and what that kind of does to you and how that shapes your romantic life from there on. And it is just such a unique experience to your youth that you only get once. And I just love reading about it, and I love watching it. I love stories about first love. So this one says it is an interracial first love, a story of first love that will break your heart. This bittersweet debut novel follows two teenagers whose all-consuming relationship is tested by the forces of class, prejudice, and addiction. So it sounds like just a big, dramatic story about love, and I love those kinds of stories. The next book is The Stardust Grail by Yume Kitasei. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. And this one sounds like a really big story. And it's about aliens and love and space and I don't know, just anything that has to do with space and other worlds I'm in. I love those kinds of stories. I just love big stories like that. This is a thrilling anti-colonial space heist to save an alien civilization. Maya sets out on a breakneck quest through a universe teeming with strange life and ancient ruins, but the farther she goes, the more her visions cast a dark shadow over her team of friends, new and old. Someone will betray her along the way. Worst yet, in choosing to save one species, she may condemn humanity and Earth itself. So it sounds like super high stakes, and I'm really interested in this one. And the cover was beautiful, so this one is definitely one I want to pick up. The next one is The Throne, the Machiavelli Trilogy Book 1. So it sounds like it's the start of a series by Franco Bernini. And I love big historical fiction novels. I love reading about history and reimaginings. This sounds like one that's going to follow Machiavelli. And I mean, I think like most people, I've heard of Machiavelli, but I don't really know his story or the significance of him. So this meticulously researched and brilliantly told historical novel, the first of the Machiavelli trilogy, recounts the recounts the life of Niccolo Machiavelli, revealing the complex man behind the infamous political strategist. The Throne is a captivating reflection on ambition, morality, and the pursuit of power and influence. And then it says, you know, in the style of Hilary Mantel, Maggie O'Farrell. It is a political history and questions and asks what lengths can one justifiably go to achieve greatness. So, sounds like a big one, but it sounds interesting to me. The next book is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. So I haven't read any Paul Tremblay books. I think this is probably one of the bigger horror novel books that are anticipated this year. So I'm kind of interested in this one because it sounds like it is an ode to VHS and cursed movies. And it says, in June 1993, a group of young guerrilla filmmakers spent 4 weeks making Horror Movie, a notoriously disturbing art house horror flick. The weird part, only 3 of the film's scenes were ever released to the public. But Horror Movie has nevertheless grown a rapid fan base. 3 decades later, Hollywood is pushing for a big budget reboot. The summary goes on, but I love books or shows or TV that is about books or shows or TV. I kind of like the background of that. I have kind of a past history in doing that sort of thing in my career, so I just find it fascinating, and I love reading stories about that. So I think that's what pulled me to Horror Movie. Next we have The Modern Fairies by Clare Pollard. This sounds like it is a historical fantasy that it says it's based on real events. So it's inspired by real events, which is really interesting. And it's about fairies, so it immediately kind of grabbed me. It says, no one knows this better than Madame Marie de Aulnoy. It's a last name I don't know. Each week, a rogue group of intellectuals gather at her Parisian home to debate, flirt, and perform contes de fées, fairy tales that challenge the status quo, at a salon that will change the course of literature forever. But while they weave tales of glass slippers, enchanted beasts, and long-haired princesses, a wolf is lurking who threatens to destroy the members of the salon one by one. Brilliant in body, romantic and provocative, The Modern Fairies is a dazzling novel inspired by real events about the delights and dangers of storytelling in dark times. That just sounds so fun, and similar to Horror Movie, I just like stories about stories, you know. It's something that interests me, and the cover was really cool on this one as well. Next we have Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This is probably the biggest book on my list. It's Riley Sager. I want to read it, but I know they write really quick, fast-paced fun reads, and this is no different. I won't read the summary just because it is so popular. Next thing that I am looking forward to is Same as It Ever Was by Clare Lombardo. So this one sounds like a literary fiction that delves deep into the natures of relationships, and it sounded a lot like, and from the synopsis, it's kind of in the vein of Anne Patchett and Celestine. So it says, Same as It Ever Was traverses the rocky terrain of real life, exploring new adventures of maternal ambivalence, intergenerational friendship, and the happenstantial cause and effect that govern us all. Delving even deeper into the nature of relationships, how they grow, change, and sometimes end, Lombardo proves herself a true and infinite cartographer of the human heart and asserts herself among the finest novelists of her generation. Whew. So I haven't read any Clare Lombardo. I love a good lit fic that is about relationships, dynamics, and I've seen this cover a few times and it just looks really interesting, so looking forward to that one. The next one is Devil is Fine by John Vercher. This one has a really interesting premise and cover and title. Like, the cover is kind of interesting, the title, like, you can't really figure out what it's about. And the synopsis says, still reeling from a sudden tragedy, our biracial narrator receives a letter from an attorney. He has just inherited a plot of land from his estranged white grandfather. He travels to a beach town several hours south of his home with the intention of selling the land immediately and moving on. But upon inspection, what lies beneath the dirt is far more complicated than he ever imagined. In a shocking irony, he is now the black owner of a former plantation passed down by the men on his white mother's side of the family. Vercher deftly blurs the lines between real and imagined, past and present, tragedy and humor, and fathers and sons in this story of discovering and reclaiming a painful past. I really like the idea of that, and I also love having to kind of resolve or deal with the history of your family and how that affects you in present day. That one just sounded really, really interesting to me. The next one I have on my list is All the Colors of the Dark by Whitaker. So I have his other book, We Begin at the End, and I haven't read it, but I'm really looking forward to getting to it. This book also sounded really interesting, and it is about lost girls, which I really like that theme, that trope that is used in books. It says, when the daughter of a wealthy family is targeted, the most unlikely hero emerges, Patch, a local boy with one eye, who saves the girl and in doing so leaves heartache in his wake. Patch and those who love him soon discover that the line between triumph and tragedy has never been finer, and that their search for answers will lead them to truths that could mean losing one another. A missing person mystery, a serial killer thriller, a love story, a unique twist on each. Whitaker has written a novel about what lurks in the shadows of obsession and the blinding light of hope. Ooh, so I mean, that got me right there. That one I definitely have added to my list. It just sounds like it's a good intersection of all those different things, and I love books that do that. The next is Bear by Julia Phillips. I haven't read Julia Phillips either, but she has definitely been on my radar. This sounds like it's a book about sisters and kind of has a little bit of mythology. It says a mesmerizing novel of two sisters on a Pacific Northwest island whose lives are upended by an unexpected visitor, a tale of family, obsession, and a mysterious creature in the woods. I'm assuming that's a bear. I don't know. Just grab me. I want to read that one. The next book is The Daughters' War, Blacktongue #0. So this sounds like it's a prequel. It is by Christopher Buehlman. And from what I could see, he had Blacktongue's #1 already released. It sounded really interesting. I mean, the tagline said, Goblins, Betrayal, Revenge. I mean... And then it says, enter the fray in this luminous new adventure set during the war-torn, goblin-infested years just before the Blacktongue thief. So, I don't know. It was about goblins, and the cover looked really dark and looked like dark fantasy, and I like those kinds of books. I don't know, gave me Poppy War vibes. Definitely want to check that one out. And then I have The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I have seen some people talking about this book. It has a really interesting cover. It looks really atmospheric, and it looks like it's just gonna be a thrilling page turner. It says, early morning, August 1975, a camp counselor discovers an empty bunk. Its occupant, Barbara Van Laar, has gone missing. Barbara isn't just any 13-year-old, she's the daughter of the family that owns the summer camp and employs most of the region's residents. And this isn't the first time a Van Laar child has disappeared. Barbara's older brother similarly vanished 14 years ago, never to be found. So, I love mysteries like that. Sounds really interesting. Takes place, sounds like, at a summer camp, which will be a really cool atmosphere for a thriller. The next one we have is The Villain Edit by Laurie Devore. I have seen a couple of people talking about this one. I watch a lot of reality TV. I've always enjoyed reality TV. I know it's trashy TV, but I enjoy watching it nonetheless. So this one sounds like it's right up my alley, and it sounds kind of like a romance too, but like a romance more in the vein of there's something else going on and it's not solely based on romance, which I like. An irresistibly sharp and sexy dramedy about a cynical romance novelist who goes on a bachelor-like reality show to revive her flagging career, only to discover that while she may have just met the love of her life, the producers have turned her into the show's villain. Good villains make good TV. So, I don't know, it just sounds really, really fun. And I love the title, The Villain Edit. Like, there's always the villain. You always hear people after the shows, too, when they're interviewed, and they're always like, you know, they edited me a certain way. And, I mean, there's also a hero edit, too, as well, right? But The Villain Edit sounds really fun, and I'm looking forward to reading that one. The next is The Love of My Afterlife by Kristy Greenwood. This one's a really fun title, and in the vein of The Villain Edit, it kind of sounds like it's a romance book, but there's a bunch of other things going on. A recently deceased woman meets the one in the afterlife waiting room, scoring a second chance at life and love. If she could find him on Earth before 10 days are up, if she wasn't dead already, Delphi would be dying of embarrassment. Not only did she just die by choking on microwavable burger, but now she's standing in her shine like a star 90 in front of the hottest man she's ever seen, and he's smiling at her. So it sounds really fun. The next book is The Cliffs by Courtney Sullivan. And this one is a book about water, and I love books about water. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because I'm from California and I've always lived near the ocean or what it is, but anything about water and bodies of water already intrigued right away. Sprawling, richly imagined, filled with psychic mediums and charlatans, spirits in past lives, mothers, marriage, and the legacy of alcoholism. This is a deeply moving novel about the land we inhabit, the women who came before us, and the ways in which none of us will ever truly leave this earth. So definitely gonna be adding that one and hopefully reading that one this summer. Maybe by the beach or by the pool, that would be perfect. The next one is All This and More by Peng. So I've heard of Peng. I don't think I've read any of their novels. It is about alternate realities. Like I said, I love alternate realities. I like when it really shows you how choices change the rest of your life. And then this one has a fun game show premise, kind of like the villain edit, and her career is stagnant, her marriage has imploded, and her teenage daughter grows more distant by the day. Marsh is convinced she's missed her chance at everything, romance, professional fulfillment, and adventure, and is desperate for a do-over. She can't believe her luck when she's selected to be the star of the global sensation All This and More, a show that uses quantum technology to allow contestants the chance to revise their past and change their present lives. It's Marsh's only shot to seize her dreams, and she's determined to get it right this time. But even as she rises to become a famous lawyer, gets back together with her high school sweetheart, and travels the world, she begins to worry that all this and more promises might be too good to be true, because while the technology is amazing, something seems a bit off, ... So this is also sounds like it has some sci-fi in it. Sounds like an episode of Black Mirror, so maybe that's what intrigued me about it. But that one sounds really, really cool. That's probably one of the top ones on this list for me. Okay, so the next one is Anyone's Ghost by August Thompson. This title and premise just sounded really good to me, and it sounds like it takes place in summer, which would be perfect pickup for this summer, obviously. It says, it took 3 car crashes to kill Jake. Theron David Alden is there for the first 2, the summer they meet in rural New Hampshire when he's 15 and anxious, and Jake's 17 and a natural. Then 6 years later in New York City, those 2 short, ecstatic, painful nights that changed both their lives forever. The end of the dream and the longing for the dream and the dream itself all at once. Theron is not there for the 3rd crash, and yet their story contains so much joy in the glorious, stupid simplicity of a boyhood joke, the devastation of insecurity, the mysterious, porous, ungraspable fault line between yourself and the person you love better than yourself, the beautiful, toxic elixir of need and hope and want. So this sounds like a big love story as well. Whoever writes these summaries, like, amazing, because that summary sounded like a piece of art on its own. The next one is The Love Story by Meg Shaffer. From what I could gather, it's a fairy tale for adults, and it has like kind of like maybe magical realism. As boys, best friends Jeremy Cox and Rafe Howell went missing in a vast West Virginia state forest, only to mysteriously reappear 6 months later with no explanation of where they've gone or how they survived. Jeremy alone knows the fantastical truth about the disappearances, for while the rest of the world was searching for them, the 2 missing boys were in a magical realm filled with impossible beauty and terrible danger. Kind of sounds a little bit like House of Hollow. And I just finished that book, so maybe it's because it's fresh in my mind, but it sounds like they go to another world and only one remembers, which is a big part of House of Hollow, so that sounds really interesting. The next book on my list is Things Don't Break on Their Own, and this is by Sarah Easter Collins. This book is about sisters. I love stories about sisters, maybe because I have a sister, but there is that bond between sisters that is so unique. It says, 25 years ago, a young girl left home to walk to school. Her younger sister soon followed, but one of them arrived and one of them didn't. Her sister's disappearance has defined Willa's life. Everyone thinks her sister is dead, but Willa knows she isn't, because there are some things only sisters know about each other and some bonds only sisters can break. So yeah, that just sounds so good. And then we have probably one of the biggest books of the year, at least in my universe, and if you don't know about this, I'm really excited to be the one telling you about it. It is called The Book of Elsewhere, and it is by none other than Keanu Reeves. I mean, I love Keanu Reeves. It's also co-written by China Miéville, who I know is a big fantasy writer. I just haven't read anything of theirs yet. This says it is a mind-blowing epic from Keanu Reeves and China Miéville. unlike anything these two genre-bending pioneers have created before, inspired by the world of the Vercher comics. I don't know how to pronounce that. I know that Keanu Reeves has a comic book, but you'll see the spelling on the screen. It's Keanu Reeves. I love that man, and I'm so excited to read this book. It sounds like a big fantasy that is going to kind of bring more depth and world to his comic books, so that's really exciting. So the next book I have is The Horse by Willy Vlautin, and this cover is just really, really cool. That's what kind of grabbed me at first. Al hopes the horse will vanish as mysteriously as he appeared, yet the animal remains, leaving him in a conundrum. Is the animal real or a phantom conjured from imagination? It sounds kind of like a loner story about a horse that kind of changes this guy's life and kind of where he's going. So I don't know, really cool. Cover really grabbed me, if I'm honest, and I do like books about kind of like lone wolf characters living out by themselves. The next I have is Slow Dance by Rainbow Powell. It's so awesome that the author's name is Rainbow. This one I have seen around a little bit. It has a really beautiful cover, and that's probably why I remember it. The colors are amazing. It sounds like a sweet novel. It says, a bright, beaming power ballad of a novel about a love so true it refuses to be forgotten. Slow Dance is the story of two kids who fell in love before they knew enough about love to recognize it. Two friends who lost everything, two adults who just feel lost. It's the story of Shiloh and Carrie, who everyone thought would end up together, trying to find their way back to the start. So I think this summer, especially in the summer, reading books about first loves and innocence, it just kind of vibes with the carefreeness of summer, and I think those are great books to read during this season. The next book is Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. Now, I know Ava Reid is very popular. I know this is probably on quite a few people's radar. It's a reimagining of Lady Macbeth. It says it's a rewrite of one of Shakespeare's most infamous female villains. So it sounds like it kind of delves into maybe some witchcraft, historical fantasy maybe, the occult, and the cover is really, really cool. So that one sounds like it is going to be a really fun read. And then we have Burn by Peter Heller. This one is dystopian, and I do like dystopian novels. And it sounds like it's going to be a really atmospheric dark mystery. It is a novel about two men, friends since boyhood, who emerge from the woods of rural Maine to a dystopian country racked by bewildering violence. Drenched with the beauty of the natural world and the attuned to the specific cadence of male friendship, even here at the edge of doom, Heller's magisterial new novel is both a blistering warning of a divided country's political strife and an ode to the salvation of our chosen families. It immediately gripped me, so that's definitely on my list. I'm just gonna end up saying that for every book, like that's on my list, like no duh, April, this is on your list, that's why you're talking about these books. But yeah, anyways. The next book is The Divide by Morgan Richter. I am actually from LA, and I just like books about LA. I think it's such a major city with so much history to it, and I love reading about it. I think also I love reading about it because a lot of times when there's references made to certain areas or certain towns or certain places, I obviously have a connection to those places, and it's really fun to imagine that in my head. This says it's about a failed actress turned grifting psychic, searches for her missing doppelganger, and is plunged into a web of murder and corruption among Hollywood A-listers. This sounded right up my alley. The next book is Where We Last Saw Her by Marcy Rendon, and this is a Native American story. Really like reading Native American stories because there is such an erasure of their culture, their people, their history, and this sounds like it's going to be a book in a thriller form of that. As Quill closes in on the truth behind the missing woman in the woods, someone else disappears. In her quest to find justice for the women of the reservation, she is confronted with the hard truths of their home and the people who purport to serve them. When will she stop losing neighbors, friends, family? As Quill puts herself, her family, and everything she's built on the line to make a difference, the novel asks searing questions about bystander culture, the reverberations of even one act of crime, and the long-lasting trauma of being invisible. It sounds so good. I'm really excited about this. And I think this one is the book that is releasing in September, but I had to include it because it just really gripped me, that synopsis. Those are the fiction books that I'm really excited to get to kind of hear reviews about them and such this summer. And then the nonfiction picks, I only have 6 nonfiction picks here. I do enjoy nonfiction. I feel like I haven't really been on my nonfiction grind. I haven't been reading a lot of nonfiction in the last 6 months or so, so I kind of want to get back into that because I really do enjoy them. The first book on my list is Sing Like Fish: How Sound Rules Life Underwater, and this is by Marina Kingdon. I like weird science. Some of my favorite books are weird science books or grisly science. They're types of sciences that like you've never thought about before until you read the title and you're like, oh yeah, like what is that, or what is the story behind that? So that's kind of what this book sounded like to me. It is a captivating exploration of how underwater animals tap into sound to survive, and a clarion call for humans to address the ways we invade these critical soundscapes. So yeah, that sounds really interesting. The next one is probably one of the top ones on my nonfiction list, and it is The Friday Afternoon Club, a family memoir by Griffin Dunne. I feel like I've heard of Griffin Dunne, but I can't quite place it. And then when I read the summary, I was like, oh, maybe I have heard of Griffin Dunne before. They name drop a lot of famous people. At 9, Sean Connery saved him from drowning. At 13, desperate to hook up with Janis Joplin, he attended his aunt Joan Didion's legendary LA party for the publication of Tom Wolfe's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. In his early 20s, he shared an apartment in Manhattan's Hotel des Artistes with his best friend and soulmate, Carrie Fisher, while she was filming some sci-fi movie called Star Wars, and he was a struggling actor working as a popcorn seller at Radio City Music Hall. A few years later, he produced and starred in the now iconic film After Hours, directed by Martin Scorsese. In the midst of it all, Griffin's 22-year-old sister Dominique, a rising star in Hollywood, was brutally strangled to death by her ex-boyfriend, leading to one of the most infamous public trials of the 1980s, which ended in a travesty of justice that also somehow marked the beginning of their father Dominique Dunne's career as a best-selling author of true crime narratives. And yet, for all its bold-faced cast of characters and jaw-dropping scenes, The Friday Afternoon Club is no celebrity memoir. It is down to its bones a family story that brilliantly embraces the poignant absurdities and best and worst efforts of its lovable, infuriating, funny, and moving characters, its author most of all, finding wicked, self-deprecating humor and glints of surprising light in even the most harrowing and painful circumstances. So this sounds the perfect intersection of what I like. You know, Hollywood stories, memoir, coming to grips with how your history has shaped your future and how your family's history shapes you. It sounds so interesting. This is probably like my most anticipated nonfiction for this summer, for sure. And I have The Uptown Local, Joy, Death, and Joan Didion, a memoir by Corey Leadbeater, another Didion name drop. So I guess this author was an assistant to Didion before she passed. He was an aspiring novelist in his early 20s, presented with an opportunity to work for a well-known writer whose identity was kept confidential. And then suddenly he found himself the personal assistant to a titan of literature, Joan Didion. In the 9 years that followed, Corey shared Joan's rarefied world, transformed not only by her blazing intellect, but by her generous friendship and mentorship. And then it sounds like there's other personal dramas that are going on alongside this, but I love those kinds of stories, as you well know from watching this video. Next is Q the Sun, The Invention of Reality TV by Emily Nussbaum. So like I mentioned before, I'm a reality TV watcher. So to read about how reality came to play, and I feel like reality TV really became popular as I grew up, so I've kind of seen all those phases, and it'll be really fun to kind of read about it and be reminded. Who invented reality TV, the world's most dangerous pop culture genre, and why can't we look away from it? In this revelatory, deeply reported account of the rise of dirty documentary, Emily Nussbaum unearths the surprising origin story of the genre that ate the world, as told through the lively voices of the people who created it. Traces 4 paths of reality innovation: game shows, prank shows, soap operas, and clip shows that united in the Survivor format, sparking a tumultuous Hollywood gold rush. I love Survivor. I still watch Survivor to this day, so I am excited to kind of read about the origins of it. And I remember watching the first season of Survivor as a kid, and this just sounds like it's perfect for someone like me. And the next book is Swimming Poetry, The Untold Story of Women in Water by Vicky Balasik. And I just love history about women. I feel like Our history is so full and told by men, so reading history about women, little known history, is really fascinating to me. It is a groundbreaking history of how women found synchronicity and power in water. This is another one of those nonfiction type books where you would never think about that history, or you would never think about this topic until you read that title, and then you're immediately intrigued. So that's kind of what this book did for me. Lastly, I have Sharks Don't Sink: Adventures of a Rogue Shark Scientist by Jasmine Graham. This is a debut. I mean, that title grabbed me immediately. I think everybody wanted to be a marine biologist when they were growing up. And this is from a marine biologist and co-founder of Minorities in Shark Sciences, a powerful debut. It is the uplifting story of a young Black scientist's challenging journey to flourish outside the traditional confines of academia, inspired by her innate connection to nature's most misunderstood animal, the shark. I think reading about this and kind of reading with a little bit of a personal memoir touch to it will be really fun. So I'm excited for that one. That is all my nonfiction picks, and those are all of my summer TBR books that I'm really excited to get to this summer. Obviously, I can't read them all along with my normal TBR, but hopefully I can get to a majority of them, and maybe there's some here that you haven't heard of that are now on your radar that you can be excited about. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.